So basically, I born in Armenia, in Yerevan, in 1982. I was in a family of three. I had one brother and have one sister. Actually, my young years are coincided with quite a difficult situation for Armenia. It was the collapse of the Soviet Union, early 90s. Basically, we had a major earthquake in Armenia, and the Soviet economy collapsed. And everything that seems to work before that didn't work at that time. My parents were engineers in one of the biggest research institute in the Soviet Union. But then because the whole value chain collapsed, they lost their jobs. And it was quite difficult to find your way out. I finished the school when I was 15 years old. Normally you do that when you are 18 or 20. That was partly because I went to the school when I was 5. Again, quite an unusual thing. So I finished the Yerevan State Economy Institute at the age of 20 with a summa cum laude diploma, and then went to serve military services 2 years. When I came back, it was... But before that, I want to talk about why I chose my major as economy, because that was kind of a little bit unusual for me and for my family as well. I grew up in a family of engineers, and for them, and considering from the Soviet point of view, is like the economist was not sound like a profession at all. So I overcome quite a few challenges selecting that as a profession, but I didn't know at the end of the day what I'm gonna do and where I'm gonna end up. So when I was back from the army, I was 22 years old, having no idea what I'm gonna do and where I'm gonna end up. I started work in a small boutique consulting firm offering accounting and tax services to various local companies. It was owned by the brother of my good friend. Started to work there basically from the scratch, taking a paper from the office to the tax authorities, bringing it back, sending letters, doing a photocopying, etc., etc. After 3 years, PwC has opened an office in Armenia, and I decided to send my application. Surprisingly, they called me in. I did pass the interview, but the feedback was like, look, we like you, but we want to hold your CV because that was for the auditor position, because you do not seem to be auditor. I didn't realize at that time that it was a compliment. And I thought it's a decline. After 6 months, I got a call saying, hey, do you mind still coming to us and work with us in the tax and legal department? And I said, why not? Eventually, that appeared to be a great decision. So I joined a team of one expat senior manager and another consultant. And to cut the long story short, work through my way to becoming head of tax and legal of PwC in Armenia. And by the way, recently I changed my job. I now work with KPMG, again heading their tax and legal services. I would definitely suggest and advise anyone to use Firmsconsulting material. When I think to myself whether I would recommend it to someone, I can take this question from two different angles. Firstly, it's a great resource, and I would definitely recommend to anyone who wants to achieve a success in their career to work through the materials that they have. On another side, and take this as an anecdote, I wouldn't recommend a Firmsconsulting to someone who competes with me, because it provides an enormous competitive advantage. So to describe the Firmsconsulting, it's a good analogy is to use the Fight Club. So the first rule of the Fight Club is not to tell anyone about Fight Club. In the middle of my career, I was seconded to Moscow to work in a bigger offices in a different environment with larger clients. And I'm a kind of person that always work on myself, trying to find things. So one day I was surfing internet and came across the FC. One thing that immediately catch my mind and my eye, that the quality of the content is very, very different from what you normally have. It was deep, it was very structured. So at least 3 important things drive the fact that I think the Firmsconsulting is different. So firstly, all the content is prepared and delivered by former partners. It's hardly you find anywhere a partner teaching you the skills that could make someone become successful in their careers.
This is going to be true regardless of whether you try to become a generalist partner, as in I own the client relationship and I bring in specialists, or a specialist partner in that I'm an expert on operations, on purchasing, on whatever, and people bring me in and I do that work and then I move on.
So normally the level of exposure is quite low. I mean, that was different with Firmsconsulting. Partners were delivering the materials. Secondly, the huge difference is that Firmsconsulting teach you the core skills. So it's not providing you 10 tips how to become successful, or 5 ways of finding yourself somewhere, or teaching you a couple of frameworks that you can take and apply somewhere. Firmsconsulting is teaching you the core skills: how to solve problems, how to think critically, how to communicate well. And thirdly, it's fun. Every podcast is delivered with anecdotes, with funny stories, so you really enjoy listening to those podcasts, watching audios and videos. And most importantly, they explain that in a logical manner. So it's not that they use the partner authority to say, hey, this is the right thing to do. They explain you why this skill is important, why this advice should be used in this way. And I think that provides for an exclusivity of the program. My personal experience with Firmsconsulting, I think it did change my life basically. I feel that in last 4 or 5 years, from the moment I started to use the resources, my career progression accelerated enormously. You can use Firmsconsulting in a couple of different ways. You can use it as a general framework to develop yourself, or you can use it to find specific answers to specific questions. For example, you want to provide a feedback to an associate, you go to the lab study, and there you can find what framework to use, what are key criteria to assess someone, how to assess that, and how to do that in a proper way. One advice I want to give to someone who will be working himself through the Firmsconsulting material is be very methodical. Understand where to start, where to move next, and what to do. Don't think that you can watch the video one time and learn the skill. You have to be very methodical. You have to do that 2 or 3 times. You need to understand where to start and where to move on. For example, if you are working through the TCO, be sure you first watch the preparatory videos, then you move to TCO 1, then you move to TCO 2, and only then you work through the material to TCO 3, because the level of difficulty is building up and you need to be able to learn the ground skills, so put the basics in place, then to move on. There are fascinating shows out there like the Bill Matasoni show, where a guy who led the McKinsey's and BCG's marketing efforts, teaching you in the first place what the marketing is. But you have to be ready to grasp that material, so you need to start from the basics. One may think, why it's important? If someone is talking about marketing, why do you need to understand the problem solving and the critical thinking skills? I would say no, that's important. You need to understand how consultants think, how consultants solve the problem, how they approach the problem, to be able to grasp the material which is provided by Bill Matasoni. For me, the firm's consulting could be described in one word, and that word is trust. You may think why it's important. I would say it's very important. You have to be able to trust them that the skills they teach you are absolutely important and critical for you to become successful. I trusted them when 4 years ago I started to watch the materials, and you sometimes the advice they provide is controversial. And you think, okay, maybe I shouldn't apply it, or I should apply it in a different way. No, believe me, and trust them. Whatever they teach is coming from decades of experience. Working with Firmsconsulting has changed the way I'm setting goals for myself. I was always thinking of myself as being a very ambitious guy. Believe me, the Firmsconsulting resources helped me to increase the bar 10 times higher. At the end of the day, one important thing they teach you is that there are no limits. You can achieve everything if you learn the right skills, if you apply them in the right manner and in the right place. I want to bring an example of one of the memorable parts of working through the FC. I was trying to work on my communication skills, and one advice I found there is go on YouTube and try to find a video of Johnny Depp and his wife making an apology. That was fun. A likable persons like Johnny and his wife, they were looking so bad, so rude, so confused. So you understand why communication is that important. My work is quite demanding. I'm usually coming back home quite late. And one may think, in a family, why would you spend a couple of hours watching some videos? My wife realized that those videos are changing actually changing myself. She sees how energized I am. She sees how those videos change me professionally and probably as a person as well. The biggest benefits of working through FC is that first you change the skills that are for life. For example, if you understand how to solve problems, you may be able to do that in any situation. I want to bring an example on how the skills taught in Firmsconsulting online program can benefit you and help you in any situation. I had a client meeting a few weeks ago where the client asked me about something I had no clue about. It was a question about tourism industry, etc. I started to use the brainstorming technique taught by Firmsconsulting, broke the question down, explained the drivers of the tourism, explained how what you have to do to change the tourism industry of Armenia. And that dialogue ended up being quite an interesting discussion, and that person did not even understand that I have no idea about the sector. Well, if someone calls me and say, why should I choose Firmsconsulting training program and not the other one? I will tell them 2 or 3 very important things. Firstly, it's consulting partners that teach you the skills, and you won't be able to find that exposure anywhere else. So secondly, the quality and the quantity of material is just unbeatable. You can find advice for a specific situation, or you can find advice for a general situation. If you are in a tech sector, you can go to the tech merger study and understand what are the drivers behind the tech company business. If you are starting a startup, you can go and watch a new program that is preparing right now about how to build a successful startup in a very short period of time. So, to cut the long story short, it's a very useful resource. When you think about Firmsconsulting, one may be concerned as whether it's an expensive service or not. I would take it in a one way. Firmsconsulting is only about quality, and price is not important there. If you want to become successful in your career, you need to be ready to invest. And at the end of the day, that investment is worth it. I'm sure it will come back multiplied by hundreds and thousands.